Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you are well today. Today we're going to be doing another sequence of quick critiques. So my first quick critique will be a critique of the state of personality theory nowadays in general and on the internet. So if you look forward to my thoughts, which are somewhat in the continuation of my quick critiques of C.S. Joseph, objective personality, typology and all that, well then stay tuned. And in the second part of the video, I'll share some thoughts on Frank James and the various discussions that surround his case. So I'm sure you're curious about that. So again, stay tuned. Just before I move on, let me remind you that I've written a very nice book on the INFJ type. It's called The Ecstatic Soul, and it's available in paperback and ebook format. Description box below provides all the Amazon links. Less than $10. It's the deepest investigation of the INFJ. So if you have a good, decent understanding of the INFJ, the function stack, and all that comes with it, but you want to deepen your understanding, get a sense of what the INFJ consciousness is like, how it's broken down, and the existential conclusions to draw from it, the Ecstatic Soul is the way to go. Good reviews too. So if you have any questions, you ask me. Now, what do I think of the state of typology nowadays at the moment online, etc., etc.? It's become quite, it's been trendy, it's been fashionable, it's been a low-hanging fruit really to criticize typology for being pseudo-science. But in case you've noticed, people who are interested in in typology actually don't really care about those who are skeptics, and the skeptics are not really interested enough anyway to have much influence over them. So let's ignore those skeptics that, have just read an article or thing that typology reduces to the horoscope. We know that's not the case, so we don't really have to care about them. Nevertheless, we can consider the fact that there are some very positive developments at the moment, I think, in typology and personality theory happening, particularly online, particularly on YouTube, where you can see that the insights of Jung and their repurposing by Myers-Briggs and others have led to a number of different approaches and different channels that offer different ways of conceptualizing type, identifying type, provide coaching and typing services, and all the rest. It's becoming almost difficult to give a summary of all of them, to break all of them down, but obviously you have objective personality, you have C.S. Joseph, you have talking with famous people. I think that he offers some typing services, Eric Thor. You also have rational typology, you have different schools of the voltology, as I call them. And you have, the book by Michael Pierce, Modes and Beams, and Neo-Jungianism. You have Hy Merle's own cognitive personality theory. So you have lots of different approaches, not to mention Azure Psych. Chris is also doing some excellent work. In fact, his channel, I think, could be my favorite when it comes to the seriousness of his analyses. I mean, there's another number of good ones. Harry Merle's great too. And I like most of the people I just cited, but there's something that we need to realize is that to say that personality theory and typology is not a science is not it's not necessary to say something false, but I think that we need to realize that science is not something that is necessarily only intrinsic to a particular activity. So you could have any particular channel, any particular website with a team that provides assessments of personality and have their own theory, their own models. They might have all that. They might claim that they're following the scientific method, or they might make a somewhat similar claim. That does not necessarily mean that they are scientific. In fact, you could have a method that is as scientific as you want. If you're lacking the domain of community that surrounds a particular science, then you're not a science. And that's something that we've known since at least the second half of the 20th century with the works of Thomas Kuhn, particularly The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Science does not actually have a method. For example, I was chatting to Eric Thor recently, and he was, he's been discussing objective personality a little bit, and he was saying that they do follow the scientific method, or at least they try to. And I find myself having to, disagree at least to some extent, because ensuring that your results are as little biased as possible, that there is some randomness involved in the testing and the samples and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, that's one element of what scientists do, but there's no actual scientific methods. And I would be very curious if anybody went to them and said, "You say you follow the scientific method. What is the scientific method?" I'd say they'd be hard pressed to give an answer, because there is no particular scientific method. There's no method that you can select and say that's scientific. There's lots of different ways of being scientific, and scientists can pick any of those ways. What matters principally is that you create a falsifiable theory, a theory that can be falsified, and that this falsifiability be available to a community of people around them that can offer critique, questioning, and collaboration as well. And the problem is, because usually those theories are twinned with business models behind them, so the people behind those theories are also trying to make money off them, they will not have an interest in promoting rational critical exchange and taking on board the criticisms, admitting that their theory are maybe at least partially false. This is not going to be a spirit that's cultivated. And in fact, because there are different businesses, they're competing against each other, so they have a vested interest in proving they're right and that the others are wrong. So that's what is unscientific about current day typology, is that the community is unscientific. There's competition for the wrong reasons instead of collaboration for the right reasons. And that's essentially the most unscientific aspect about it. In order to become more scientific, all the community will have to change and become more collaborative in spirit. Now, when it comes to Frank James, I'm asked from time to time what I think of Frank James. And as you know, I like to take a neutral stance most of the time, especially if I see no point in embracing a non-neutral stance, because what's going to bring me, So what I would say is that I think Frank James has a channel that's quite entertaining, quite enjoyable. There's nothing wrong with enjoying Frank James's channel. You're not a sellout if you enjoy his content. Because he's good at what he does. I think he's found his path and he's good at what he does. As regards the question whether he's really an INFJ or not, so I think the people who say he knows himself better than anyone else, and he's able to give a coherent description of many types, therefore he must know himself and be able to type himself correctly, therefore if he says he's INFJ, he must be. I mean, obviously that's not the right way of thinking about it, because you could be super professional, expert, rational, and be capable of providing really good analyses and discussions of the functions of different types of other people. But when it comes to yourself, there is an extra little thing that takes place that maybe biases the whole thing. It's emotion. The emotions of wanting to be a certain type, or having become used to think of yourself as a certain type. There's a certain inertia of expecting that you're just that type. And it takes some efforts at many levels to try to start imagining what you would be like if you were another type. So like, you could be the most rational person on earth and still be wrong about your type for biases that stem back to feelings, emotions, things that are buried in your unconscious and you don't necessarily realize. So I don't believe in that. Now, do I think that Frank James comes across as an INFJ in his videos? I would say not particularly, but it's hard to tell, because these days, he's acting most of the time. So what I would say is that on the basis of the videos that he was releasing before he started acting in most of his videos, I would say he's an NF of some kind. But it's hard for me to say whether he would be more like an INFP, ENFP, or INFJ. ENFJ, no, but between INFJ, INFP, and ENFP, I just find that I don't have enough data. He's hard to type, so he could be INFJ. I think that if he were, maybe he'd be a slightly unusual one, but I'm not excluding this possibility, but he might be either one of the other types I mentioned. But as long as you're willing to suspend judgment on that front, you can still enjoy his content, even more so now that he's making content where the credibility of his own typing is actually not that important. And it should not be even important if he was wrong about his type, as long as you don't pay for his services in typing, Why not have someone who makes really interesting content about types, even though they might not be completely in the clear about their own type? It's fine. It's fine. He's not competing with C.S. Joseph or anything like that, so it's fine. Now, Leave a comment, drop me a like, and consider subscribing, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.